wonderful. Jesus, my Lord. He is the mighty Master of everything. His name is wonderful. Jesus, my Lord. He's the great shepherd, rock of all ages, Almighty God is He. Bow down before Him, love and adore Him. His name is wonderful, Jesus, my Lord. His name is wonderful. His name is wonderful. His name is wonderful. Jesus, my Lord. He is the mighty Master of everything. His name is wonderful. Jesus, my Lord. He's the great shepherd, the rock of all ages, Almighty God is He. Bow down before Him, love and adore Him. His name is wonderful, Jesus, my Lord. Number 102. Be the next song, number 102. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There's something about that name. Hopefully that's what you've come to accept and see all the great things that He's done. All right, number 102. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There is something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like fragrance, I feel the rain. Jesus, 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 there on heaven and earth proclaim. King and Kingdom will all pass away, but there's something about that name. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There's something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like fire after the rain. Jesus, 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 that on heaven and earth proclaim. King and Kingdom will all pass away, but there's something about that name. All right, very good. It's good to hear those extra voices. 229. Number 229. It's not the voices I was talking about on Wednesday. It's good voices. All right, 229. We're only going to sing the three on the left side, not the two optional stanzas, okay? How lovely are the mountains are to be good news, announcing me proclaiming the happiness are not great, are not great, are not great, are not Our God reigns. Our God reigns. He had no name before we had no majesty that we should be. God is in. He was his life, and he is no account of him. Yet now he reigns with the Most High. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Now from the Jews he gave the praise and majesty that he is alive, God of the soul, and he to be inside. Yes, we know he is alive. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Our God reigns. Number 2 must be my favorite verse. I kept reverting back to it every time. I'd go down to the third one, back up to the second one. All right. Number 385, we are song to help us participate in the Lord's Supper in our mind. And we can say all 4 verses. Of course, like we did last week, so that we will not have more handling of the bread in the cup. I put the bread on the bottom with a cup, and then the cup of juice is on the top. So take it out and then participate of it, and then just put it right there on the floor next to you. Okay? Just don't kick it over. 385. Jesus gave me near the cross, a precious fountain, free to all, a freedom free. From Calvary's mountain, in the cross, be my glory ever, till my rapture full shall rest beyond the river. Hear the cross of Calvary's throne, and mercy found me. There's a bright and morning star, shed its beams around me. In the cross, be my glory ever, till my raptured soul shall find rest beyond the river. Hear the cries of men of God, it sees before me, that my Lord from day to day, its shadows o'er me. In the cross, be my glory ever, till my raptured soul shall find rest beyond the river. Hear the cross of God and me, be trusting ever, till I reach the golden strand, just be beyond the river. In the cross, be my glory ever, till my raptured soul shall find rest beyond the river. We participate in the Lord's Supper, gather our thoughts together, and get our minds off of all the other things. And I just think of how so many times we go through life and we just don't take time to enjoy the things that matter the most. During this time, of course, we have the coronavirus and the things that come with it. And one of the things that we have had extra time for is our family. And like I brought out in the adult class that, we have a time only so many years with our children, and then they're gone. And a lot of times, most of our time is spent earning a living for those children. But then we get home and we're kind of tired, and our children are kind of put aside. And so now, with this, where our families have to be together, we need to embrace that, because it's only going to be temporary. But we'll all look back 2020 and say, remember that time when we got to spend more with each other? And you just think about what we got to do. Well, let's go to Matthew chapter 26. And there was a time when Jesus needed to have somebody with him. He was about to go to the cross. Matthew chapter 26 and verse 36, we find that Jesus chose out his closest people. You just think about it, myself, when you're growing up, the closest people would probably be your family. And now, of course, my closest is my wife. I don't have children at home, so the closest is my wife. And, you just think about it. Who would you like to be with in a very important time? When graduation comes, you want to be with your family. Or be with your family, your in second tier of the family, which would be your grandparents. And if you're really blessed, maybe even your great-grandparents. And you see that and you choose that. Well, Jesus did the same thing, is that he went over there to Gethsemane. And he was known for the fact of going away by himself. When times were very, very busy, he would take the apostles and they would go to a solitary place. And a lot of times he'd just go by himself. But a lot of times he also went with the apostles. Well, this time he narrowed it down to his closest apostles. So you got 12 apostles, then you have 3 apostles, and then the closest, of course, was John. And so he had a choice, 12 people, 3 people, and then 1 person. So in Matthew chapter 26, you find him heavy at heart. He's going to go to the cross. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to spend time with them. What are they going to do? They're going to be asleep. And, I just think about that, how that sometimes when you're really excited and you want to share something and the other person's not too excited about it, it doesn't feel too good. But imagine if you're in a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety and you call somebody up and they just don't want to talk. That's the way it was with Jesus. Except Jesus seen far in the future. He saw the need to do what he was going to do. And as Hebrews says that, he could see the joy that was set before him. And that joy that was set before him was those that were going to be saved were going to be with him in heaven if he stayed on the cross. But of those people, 3 of them were with him, and they didn't even appreciate what he was doing for them. So let's look there at verse 36. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you'll not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." So as we see here, he was frustrated because they were asleep, but it wasn't going to deter him from the job that he had at hand. That is one of the things that I appreciate about him, because some people will do for others as long as they are appreciated. As long as they get the credit, they're going to do it. Jesus didn't have that. There he was, he had 12 apostles. He didn't choose the 12. He chose 3 to go with him. Of those 3, his closest was one of them, which is John. And he didn't even stay awake while he was praying. So I just think about this. Nothing deterred Jesus, and nothing should deter us from remembering him and living like he wants us to. So think on these things. Dear Lord in heaven, I thank you, Lord, for the blessing it is to be here today, and that you may help us as we remember you, that we'll do things in such a way that will edify you and that will show you much honor. I pray, Lord, you can be with each one of us, that will be such a good example for others, that they'll want to have lives like us because of what you've done for us. Help us, Lord, not to be like Peter, James, and John and fall asleep at your work, but to do work as the best we can. In Jesus' name I pray.
Father in heaven, again, we thank you for this time that you've given us to come around your table to remember your son and his death and what he went through for each one of us. I pray, Lord, that you would be with us to not only remember this at this time, but remember it at all times as we go throughout our lives. I pray, Lord, that you would be with the services today, the things said and done here, that they would be honorable and pleasing to you, and for the ones that are unable to be with us, that they would also have this time of remembrance as well. Pray, Lord, that you would be with us. We go throughout this week, that you would guide each one of us in our decision making and the things that we do, and for the ones that are not able to be with us because of an illness, that your healing hand would be upon them. And I pray these things in Jesus' name.
All right. Good morning. It's good to see each and every one, and we are excited to have birthdays here. We got Terry Julian, May the 13th. And let's see, 29 and a half.
52.
No, 52. All right. I'm 56. So 51.
You'll be 51.
Oh, I'll only be 51. Yeah.
I was like, somehow she gained a year on me. So she's actually a year younger than she thought.
Yeah, that's a see. There you go.
That's-
Great day.
That's awesome.
You think how big you'll feel next year.
Yeah, you repeat the same year.
The harder it is to
Terrible.
And then we have Corey. He's gonna be 18.
81.
Ooh, May the 16th. Big 1-0.
I'll
That
be slightly more mature than I am.
Yeah, we're gonna notice a difference next week.
I doubt that.
Oh, we're not gonna notice. Yeah, so thank God for that. All right, and then of course, happy Mother's Day to all, and those that are out there in the internet. Happy anniversary, happy Mother's Day to you also, and then we just thank God for all the time and the effort. Kind of interesting because you have one day, and basically you're supposed to say thank you and we appreciate you every day. And so we got one day we do that. So hopefully you really, really shower her with those appreciations, because it's like you got 365 days, one day for her. It doesn't make sense, but so we do want to wish everybody a happy Mother's Day. Okay, and then as far as prayer, keep praying for Brother Jerry Weller, and for Brian, and then for Bill. Bill looks good. He looks like he can run a marathon. We can do that today, or
Maybe once around the room, that's about it.
so. But it's really good to be alive and to be able to worship God. Just a wonderful thing. All right, what's the latest on Brother Jerry?
The last I heard was of his blood count or his blood clot,
Okay.
but I haven't heard anything from this week's Wednesday.
All right, so do pray for him as he recovers. Also pray for the upcoming camps, okay? We've been talking around the tribe leaders and then the managers, and so pray for those, because the kids are really looking forward to it. It would be a break from that. So pray for that there'll be a possibility. So, because we've got coming up, first would be Oklahoma camp. And I've got my assignments and everything. They just got to get the okay from the government. And then, of course, then you have in July, the Lexington one. And then in August, you have family camp. So, and then others in between there. And so pray for that. I've been keeping track on Facebook. I've got a lot of preacher friends all over the country and all over the world, but I just been keeping up with the ones here in the country, see how they are doing. And so everybody's just on the edge waiting for things to open up. So pray that God will bless that. Okay, this morning, well, I should give you a hymn of invitation. Okay, number 486. 486. Okay, this morning I'm going to be talking about Mother's Day, of course. Mother's Day, and if you guys know it, I graduated from Woodrow Wilson in Los Angeles, and President Woodrow Wilson, he proclaimed the second day of May as Mother's Day, and he established it so that we'd have a public expression of our love and reverence for the mothers of our country. Now, it's kind of interesting because Mother's Day is taken differently by different people. You got to realize when we preach to a general population. Nobody is in a cookie mold, okay? There are some that are oatmeal, some that are peanut butter, some that are M&Ms, and everybody's different. And unfortunately, not everybody had a good mother. Some people had good mothers, some didn't. Some were deserted by their mothers, and some just were not good mothers. So when you preach a message, you think about that, and it's kind of interesting because you think, well, should I preach about mothers when some don't know about their mother? Their mother was not a good example. Or should I preach and make others jealous because some had great mothers and some didn't? And what do? Well, of course, you just preach it. Just preach it. And those that didn't have good mothers, and you're a daughter, and you are married, and you are a mother, vow to God that you will not do what they did. You know, that's what you got to do. I have a really good singer that, you know, one of my favorites, and he has one about his father, and he talks about how that his father walked away from him and deserted him. And he says, I vow to God and I vow to you, son, that you'll never know a father like that. So he took what was bad and he made it good. And that's what we want to do. So today, you know, I just think about how one preacher, he said, as he was making his sermon, he thought, well, for some, motherhood is an accident, not always a welcome one. And I've heard, and it's a sad thing, they'll say, you were a mistake. Can you imagine being that person that hears that all through their life, that they weren't wanted and they were a mistake? And I think, you know what, that is child abuse. That is child. But I've heard that. I've heard that time and time again. For some, biological motherhood isn't possible. For some, mothers weren't really that nice. And for some, motherhood under the very best of circumstances was not a bed of roses. So, you know, I just think of it, how people come from all sorts of places and things like that. And we think of children, you all had a mother, everybody had a mother. But whether it was a good mother, that's a different story. And I kind of wonder if that sometimes messes a person's mind up. Because God made a man and a woman. And that man and woman provides 100% of our needs in growing up, as far as from a human perspective. When you take out the father, and he's not doing his job, then they only got 50%. And then if the mother's not doing her thing, then that child is raising herself. And that's a sad thing. So when we think of all these things, we think, how do we deliver a message? Do we deliver a message? Because when we go through the Bible, we raise that idea of the perfect mother. That perfect mother and how she should be. When we know there are no perfect mothers. But we do know the expectation should be there. And for those that are the daughters, that you want to make sure that you're following what God expects from you. And when you're a young man, you look for a woman not that is just perfectly beautiful, but one that is what? A Christian that wants to be that mother like God wants her to be. So with all those thoughts, you just think, how in the world do you preach a sermon? You don't want to touch this person, you might make them cry. You don't want to do this one, you make this one have bad feelings towards you because you don't understand. I didn't have a mother like that. Well, in a perfect world, I'd have wisdom to deliver the perfect message that everybody would know. But you got to deliver one. And so, I just think of this how that so many times that even those that had a tough time and were maybe a single mother that was raising their child, they had the blessing of their child. I don't know how many times that I've seen children and little kids, and I love little children, little babies and little children, and any chance I get, I try to say hi to them. I know they're the closest thing from God because they were just developed. They were just created. And to see them smile back at me, see them wave at me, I just think that's from God. And I just think, mom or dad, whoever has them, take care of that child. Make them feel special. Make them feel good because they are something special. So it doesn't matter if they struggled and worked 2 or 3 jobs just to have finances enough to support them. They'll give back to you if you treat them right. They'll give back. Now, if we're fearful of everything, very few things can get accomplished in life. I just think about that, where we do get worried about the young ladies that become mothers, and you think, what kind of husband are they marrying? Or if they don't have a husband, what about that child? Someone's got to raise that child. So I think about the train, when the train was invented. When the train engine was invented, many people, this is crazy because you think about it, we were born and trains were already here. But when trains were invented, they just had horses that pulled whatever needed to be pulled around. And so here this train was developed, and all these naysayers were sitting back, crossing their arms and saying, that thing will never get going. It started right up, chugga, and it started getting more and more steam, and as it got more and more steam, got more and more power, it started pulling that thing down the track. And then the naysayers said, I bet you they can't get it stopped. That's what people are like. They're negative, and it doesn't matter whether you're starting or you're stopping, they're not going to believe that. And that's the same way it is with motherhood either. Or, well, you know what? That person is going to amount to anything because have you seen her mom? Guess what? You can change things. That's the beauty about Christianity, is things can be changed. It can start right where you are. And that's such an awesome thing. So I know of many mothers who never had the ideal situation, and they raised their children under unfortunate circumstances, maybe because of bad choices or maybe not, and they did a good job. I know other single mothers who had to work many jobs just to finance their children, and they did it. So it's all about what's in here. It's not what you conceived in your mind, the ideal situation. God made the ideal situation, husband and wife. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And we need to help those that are mothers in a different way. Okay, so as we look at these things, we find out that God, when he made this this command He made this command, and it wasn't about ideal situations. It was about honoring our mother. Just think about it. I'm sure that in the Israelite nation, when God developed this commandment, that there were many mothers that were not good mothers. We know that. We can just follow history, and we find there was the grandmother of one king, and she was wicked. What about Jezebel? She was wicked. There were a lot of mothers that were bad. But still, God says we need to honor them. Let's look at Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12. What's kind of interesting about this is we think about Mother's Day, and we think about mothers, and we think about ideal situations. We think, for instance, when you think about in sports, you got the Hall of Fame, and people are always arguing about, well, what consists of being in the Hall of Fame? And if you're a Hall of Fame quarterback, how many touchdowns could you throw, or you need to throw? Well, if you look at many years ago, they didn't throw the ball very much. So the quarterbacks that were in the Hall of Fame didn't have a lot of touchdowns. In fact, probably some of the new quarterbacks where people are throwing the ball all over the place have more touchdowns in 1 year than they had in their whole career. Isn't that crazy? It doesn't make them any better. It just means during the time, whenever it was, that they were great in their time. They could have been great in this time also, but they didn't do things that way back then. And so when we look at Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12, we look at this and we say, realistically, does every mother deserve honor? Well, with God, they do. Okay? Exodus 20, verse 12. It says, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. So it says, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long. So there is a blessing that comes from honoring your mother and your father. And it doesn't say, honor your good father, honor your awesome mother. It says, honor your father and mother. And I know that in the Israelite nation of over 1 million people, because there were 600,000 that came out of Egypt, that was just men. And if you give them each a wife, that'd be 1,200,000. And you give them only one child, then you even multiply it again. So out of over 1 million people, I know that there were some that were not good parents. And God did not make an exception and say, honor your great father and your great mother so that you may live long. It says, honor what you have. Honor your father and your mother. It's kind of interesting because as I get older, I look in the mirror. I looked in the mirror before too, but in the mirror, I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror, and guess who I see? I see my father. Now, my dad wasn't as dark as I am, but, I look like my dad. And, you just think about it. It doesn't matter. I can do all kinds of things, but I still don't look like my dad. You know what? That's my dad. And I just think about how that we think about, what about my mother? What about my father? God says, you just honor them. As you get older, you're going to find out you do things just like your parents did. Isn't that weird? You say, oh, I don't want to be like fuddy-duddy like them. I don't want to do this. And guess what? You're going to be doing things just like that. When you're raising your children, you're going to find yourself doing the same stuff unless you make a deliberate attempt to be godly if they were doing things right and follow God's way. Other than that, you're going to find out you're saying the same things. You probably said, I've told you 1,000,000 times. I bet you heard that when you were little. And what do you say? The same thing. I told you 1,000,000 times. Where did that come from? You heard it before. Mom probably told you. And I just think, you know what? God says, you honor your father and mother. Not because they're great, but because God told you. They brought you into the world. And I remember this saying, I brought you into the world and I can take you out. And I think, what a lousy parent to say something like that. But I've heard that from people. They'll say that to their children. And I'm blessed that my parents never said that. Deuteronomy chapter 5. So what we have here is in Exodus, that's the first giving of the law. Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 16 is the second giving of the law. Okay? So he's making sure that they know what the law is all about. And he says here, honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live long, that it may go well with you in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. What does he do? He doesn't make any revisions. Doesn't say, you know what, the first time I gave you that law, it didn't go so well. Maybe we could just revise it a little bit. He doesn't say that. He says, honor your father and mother, because that's what God commanded us. So it's not that they lived a godly life. It's not like they lived godly, either the man or the woman. It's just that you just give them honor. It teaches a person respect. One of the things you realize is that you've been with them longer than anybody else when you're young. You're with them, okay? And so whether they have they brought you up good or they brought you up bad, you were with them all that time. It's a way of showing other people respect and honor. I still remember the day when one day my dad did something and I was fed up because he used to mistreat my mom. And so I'm going to challenge him. I was his size now. At that time, I was in high school. I'd been lifting weights and stuff. And so I challenged him. And my mom, who was only 5'0", came between us. And here I was defending her. And just gave me a what for up and down. You do not do that to your dad. You do not. And I backed away and I realized she was teaching me whether a person is right or wrong, you still show respect. And he was in the wrong. And I had that righteous indignation in me. And yet she says, don't. And I just think, wow, Deuteronomy 5. Honor your father and your mother. Doesn't matter what they're doing, what they are, you still honor them. You have a piece of DNA in you. They make up what you are. Isn't that interesting? I love to do DNA research and stuff like that because I have an older brother and I can't find him. And so, I love the research. But when people are not raised and they're adopted and they find out, they go and get DNA and they meet people they've never met before, but are their brothers, sisters, or even aunts and uncles, they will see so many resemblances. They'll say things the same. They will act the same. They'll even do choices of work, employment the same. All that is made up in your DNA. We just got to make the right choices. So what we have what we are is part of our mom and our dad. So they have given us who we are. Even how tall I am, what I look like, things like that. But it's up to me to make sure that I allow God to chisel me the way He wants me to, and respect who they are. So as it says there, honor my father, honor my mother, so that God may allow me to live long, and that I'll do well in the land that God has given me. So I just think about this, and I just think, what a challenge that is. Because not everybody had great parents. Not everybody was blessed to be raised in the church. Not everybody had the perfect situation. But it's still expected the same treatment of our parents. So that is a very big thing that we need to ask God, Lord, help me understand how I can do a better job of doing that. Let's look at Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19. So Matthew chapter 19, we have this man, and he's a good man. I don't know whether he was trying to trap Jesus or not, or if he was just asking a real question. But he comes up to Jesus in Matthew 19 and verse 16, and he says, now a man came up to Jesus and asked, Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life? All right, so now that's a loaded question, because we know as Christians that everything is tied to one another, okay? So today I'm talking about mothers. And of course, if you're a man, you can apply it to yourself as a father. So one of the things, what good thing must I do to get eternal life? Well, one of the requirements would be live a godly, in my case, be a godly husband and a godly father and a godly grandfather. But that would only be a little bit of it. There's all kinds of other things. So that's really a generic question there. So he's asking Jesus that, what should I do? And then verse 17 says, why do you ask me about what is good? Jesus replied, there's only one who is good. If you want to enter life, obey the commandments. Which ones? The man inquired. Jesus replied, do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. So when Jesus tells him, what do you ask, or what good thing must I do to get eternal life? Then Jesus replies, don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't give false testimony. Honor your father and mother. So right there, important. What good thing? One of them is to honor, to cherish, to give thanks to God for them. Now, then it goes on, because it says, I've done these things, verse 20. All these I have kept, the young man said. What do I still lack? Jesus answered, if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. And all Jesus was telling him was that you've got too much involved in worldly possessions. It is above me. You need to put that aside. And he says, I can't do that. And he walked away. But one of the requirements was to honor his mother and his father. So I just think of that, and how that so many times we go through life and we say, well, I've got my P's and Q's all, they're fine. My I's are dotted and my T's are crossed. Everything's good. But honoring our father and our mother, whether they deserve it, whether they're a Hall of Fame mother or father, or whether they're not, God still says you are to honor them. Now, when I think of this, I just think, well, what does a mother do? Well, you don't say that. What did you do all day? Come home from work. What did you do all day? Her hair's not, combed. It probably was in the morning, but by her pulling all her hair out because your children were causing the problem, she doesn't look quite as good as she did in the morning. And so you don't say, what have you been doing? But being a mother causes a lot of things to happen. You become a fashion guru. You got children to dress up. You ever let your children just dress like they want to? Some children will wear the same thing every day, whether it's clean or not. I mean, that's their favorite dress, or that's their favorite, pants, and that was their favorite, and that's all they'll wear. So guess what? The fashion police has to come by. Oh, mom, she's got to tell you, you can't be dressed like that. You need to go get some clean clothes on, or you need to at least wear something different than that. And then what about the house? If all houses were decorated by the husband, we'd have sheets on the windows. Who cares about changing your sheets at home? You just keep wearing them until they get threadbare and you buy new ones. And you know what? It doesn't matter what the paint looks like. There's paint up there, that's fine. I mean, that's okay. You ever been to a bachelor's house? That's the way it is. And I'll tell you what about the clothes? Who needs a hamper? I just gather it all up and throw it in the wash machine. So wherever I take it off, I just leave it there. Yeah. Oh yeah, who cares about washing dishes? Just wait till the maggots start forming and then, use that as fish bait. Well, you see, a bachelor thinks differently. You add a new wife to his life and things change. The sheets come down, curtains go up. There's a hamper now and there's rules. You can't do that. You can't eat in here. You can't eat in there. And you're going to go outside looking like that. And that's what happens. They have to teach education. Transportation. Children need to be transported different places. Then what about psychology? Sometimes they're having a bad day. You got to teach them, you know what, there's going to be other bad days too. And, kind of get strong, get tough. Art, government, entertainment, maintenance, all those different things come to be, it's called a mother. And you know what? I'm glad God made mothers. Mothers are special. Dads are just straightforward. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. It doesn't matter if the sheet doesn't even match the room. I'm just going to hang it up. It keeps the light out. Well, that's the purpose. I just want to do purpose. I don't need decoration. Well, it changes things. Mothers change things. Let's turn to Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 30. We're going to finish with those two verses. First verse, of course, we're going to jump up to verse 10. A wife of noble character, who can find? He's not saying that there isn't any. And you know what? God doesn't make everybody like that. Sometimes they have to become Christians, and then they become like that. A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. I just think about that, how it puts them together. guy looking for a wife finds a wife, but he has to be careful. Don't just go find one. You gotta find one that's worth more than rubies. And then verse 30 says, charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. You know, it's kind of interesting because I can get in trouble with this because my wife is charming and she is beautiful, but you don't want to tell her or remind her, you know, it's deceptive and it's fleeting, because that just doesn't set well, okay? But when you think about it, how that so many times people are looking at the outside and they forget about the inside. I think of it like when you're going to buy a car. You can go and buy a car that is everything you thought it was on the outside. Okay, I like Mazda RX-7s. And so they're small, they're sleek, they're, you know, you can race around in them, they get decent gas mileage and stuff like that. But you know what? The motor has something to do with it. When I was growing up, my parents gave me a 1964 Plymouth Valiant station wagon. Okay? Remember, I was born in 1964. So before I could even drive, there it was in the driveway. And they said, this is yours. Okay? So I would go out there and I would sit in it. Okay? I couldn't drive yet. I wasn't old enough. And it had push button. Okay? So you had your neutral, you had your drive, 1, 2, 3, and then park. It had a little lever you push down to park. Okay, so that's how you set the park. And it was all on the, so you push the buttons and stuff, and it had, you know, it was a station wagon and stuff. So I had all these dreams. Even though it was a station wagon, I thought, this is going to be cool. I could push button, because other cars didn't have push button. They had, you know, up here and stuff, or down here. And so mine has push button. And so I just had a dream, you know, it was just so awesome. The only problem is they had some kind of problem with the oil. So before I could drive it, we're going to have to fix it. And so basically it wasn't drivable yet. And now I think back about it, I think it's probably the oil pump. Something real easy, but back then it was real difficult for me to comprehend. And so I just thought, wow, this is going to be awesome. So here I am just sitting in it. Can't go anywhere. Could dream. You roll down the windows, and when the wind was blowing, you could feel like you're going somewhere. But it was of no value. It just looked good. I'd wash it. You know, it'd get dirty because it was sitting back there. I'd wash it and stuff. And you could drive it. So I would back it up in my driveway. We had a long driveway, and I'd park it here, and I'd wash it, start up, drive it back. You know, as long as you didn't drive very far, the oil, you know, would mess up. So, you know, I had a lot of dreams, but it couldn't go anywhere. You know what? That's the way a lot of women are if they're not godly. They look good, but there's no value. And that's why when a person finds somebody that is godly, that is a person that's worth far more than rubies, and you'll have confidence in that person, and you'll treasure that person for the rest of your life. So in closing today, what is our goal? Our goal, if you're a mother, to be the best mother you can be. If you're a young person looking to marry somebody, you start looking at somebody and you look at their spiritual life. I mean, yeah, you're going to have the outside appearance that attracts you, but you better do some real searching of what's inside. Because, yeah, they can change, but they're not going to change. You know, everybody dreams that I'll change him. I'll change. It's not going to work. If anything, they're going to get worse because now they got you. So you make sure they're on their way and they're working hard for the Lord. Let's turn to number 486. Of course, we didn't get to this, but we're going to talk about later, is that a godly mother has faith and passes it down to the next generation. Just like Timothy had it from the grandmother to the mother and then to Timothy. So faith is where it's at. And that's what we have to understand is that beauty, when they say it's only skin deep, that's what it is. It's inside is where the mother comes from. The godly mother, it separates herself. Now, God expects us to respect all mothers, but it'd be really nice if we had a good one. So prepare yourself to be one. Let us stand and sing number 486. Faith is the victory. It camped along the hills of life, he Christian soldiers rise, and press the battle where the night shall veil the glowing sky. Against the void veils we look, and all the safety hurled. Faith is a victory we know, that overcomes the world. Faith is a victory, faith is a victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. His banner over us, love, our sword, the word of God. We tread to grow the saints among shouts of triumph God. By faith we like the world with friends on every field. The faith by which they conquered it, it's still our shining shield. Faith is a victory, faith is a victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. All right, thank you for fine attention. I just thank God for godly mothers. We just thank God for that. All right, I'd like to ask Brother Zayden to dismiss us.
Father in heaven, we thank you for this great time that we're being able to be here now. Just everything that we'll start gathering is going to be very good for everybody. Just thank you that He, mighty powerful, is able to push us through this tough time and keep families together that might be struggling. People that don't have jobs can just wait for the money to come and it'll be okay. I just thank you for everybody's health and that everybody was able to stay very healthy through this. And just
Amen.
That's what Brianna said.
Hey.